Good evening, a very warm welcome to this edition of Business at 9. I'm Vikram Oza with the big business news stories of the day, and right on top is what is going to be a very entertaining weekend. You've got the T20 World Cup semi-finals, and yes, there is going to be a very hotly anticipated film release, and that happens tomorrow itself. The weekend is going to be a very busy one. So if pre-sales numbers, if you're looking at this film, if the pre-sales numbers are anything to go by, then the film that I'm talking about, Kalki 2898 AD, has a very big chance to become the #1 opener of the year. In fact, tickets are selling for as high as 2,300 rupees. That's the kind of price a ticket costs in some theatres at least. Vinny, my colleague, will tell us more. She's got the details on the advances bookings. Vinny, it's a big film. It's a big budget film. It's going to be grand, and we're expecting 200 crores even when it comes to opening day. Tell us where expectations are pegged, because the highest ticket costing 2,300 rupees, that's phenomenal.
It will be actually turning around for in terms of PVR, Inox, the life, and maybe some improvement there, because the movie Kalki 289 at AD is a superstar movie. We have Amitabh Bachchan, Deepika Padukone, Prabhas, as well as Kamal Haasan, who are starring in the movie. So the star cast is up to mark. The advances that we are seeing in terms of the booking, that seems to be exciting. The movie is launching tomorrow, releasing tomorrow, 27th of June. And yes, on the first day, opening day, the collections are expected to be in the range of 110 to 125 crores plus, and around that mark is what we could be watching out for the opening day collection. Other than that, obviously, when you're looking at it in terms of PVR, Inox, as well as Cinepolis, in terms of the national data point that is coming in, we're seeing that yes, good tickets have been sold for the first day as well. Advance ticketing is more than around 37,000, so around 37 to 40,000 already tickets that have been sold for the first day just in these two cinemas. Theatres. Other than that, advances in even the other versions of the movie, so the Telugu version, Tamil version, that is also seeing a very good traction. There is a lot of positive commentary that is coming in for this one in terms of the pre-sales, and if the pre-sales work out as the numbers that we're seeing right now, then maybe we could see the big chance of this being a top one in terms of the opening coming in, at least from the Hindi version side. And this is despite, like you were saying, in terms of the World Cup competition that we're seeing that is there. So yes, the World Cup is going to be there, semi-finals of India-England that we are watching out for. But with that, the Star movie is also what we are watching out for. Keep an eye out on that. Expected to see a bumper opening, creating a lot of buzz. And obviously, the costliest ticket so far sold in Mumbai is of around 2,300 is the pricing. We'll be watching out for that.
Well, yes, Vinny, when you're talking about a film that could rake in 100 to 125 crores on opening day, projections even taking it up to 200 crores as well. If you look at the overall collections, yes, a ticket price at 2,300 rupees does make sense, because that's what is going to add up to overall ticket sales numbers. So this is Nag Ashwin's Kalki 2898 AD that Vinny was telling us about. It stars Prabhas, Amitabh Bachchan, Deepika Padukone is in it, along with Kamal Haasan. So yes, a big star cast. It releases in theatres on Thursday. Expected to earn as much as we are talking about on opening day. But the question is, will it do it? What are the prospects for big budget Indian films as well? The kind that we are talking about with this kind of mega star cast and the wow factor that is delivered, the punch that is delivered through visual effects. Let's take this up. Movie trade analyst Girish Wankhede is with us, and I understand senior film journalist and filmmaker Dr. Ramachandran and Srinivasan will join us as well. But Girish, what's your sense of this highly futuristic film, Kalki 2898? Will it hit bullseye at the box office and rake in as much as the expectations are pegged at?
Yes, I think it will, because we are very positive about this film. The trailer has been received tremendously well, and the way we can see the advance booking, it's tremendous. Not only Maharashtra, UP, but especially Telangana is almost sold out. Hyderabad. So when we are releasing a film of this nature, which has got Hindi, Tamil, Telugu, Malayalam languages, as well as 5,000 to 5,500 odd screen release, which is one of the biggest, also one of the biggest overseas release, we can always think positive about the film because it has a huge star cast and a huge excitement.
Joining us, historically speaking, and history comes with this double whammy, because yes, there is a mythology element to this, Dr. Srinivasan. The story itself is a mix of Hindu mythology. It's set in a dystopian world of the future. How do you think this is actually going to play out when you talk about audiences and what they've taken a liking to, the kind of content and the kind of visual effects they like to see in these big budget films? Will it deliver the punch if you look at what has happened with films like Bahubali, etc., Dr. Srinivasan?
Firstly, it, go back in history, you don't have a film of this nature, uh, basically set in a dystopian era, which has done well. Okay. But having said that, mythology is something that we all connect with, and those kind of cinema has been doing well, be it mythology, be it history. Especially, in the last few years, people's tendency to go towards mythology. You've seen, uh, the reruns of Ramayana on Doordarshan really doing well. So the people are catching on to mythology. They want the younger generation to know about mythology. The younger generation itself is wanting to know about mythology. So primarily, it piques the interest of the people to begin with. Secondly, we are going through a very bad phase in terms of the box office. So at every given point, you always try and see if there is this film which can actually break the drought and help the industry. And Kalki seems to be that kind of a film because of the nature of the film, the fact that there is a lot of research that has gone into writing a film of that nature. Because when you talk about mythology and you talk about the dystopian era, the kind of comparisons that you need to do, the kind of analogies that you need to do, the juxtapositions that you need to do, needs a lot of research and believability factor for the people. And the Indians are quite rooted in their mythology. It's not easy to fool them. So that is something that makers seem to have done well, and I guess that is reason enough for the interest in among the audiences who might possibly expect a huge number of a huge box office, maybe around 135 crores.
Yes.
I mean, look at it that way.
Girish, what do you feel? After the pandemic, there was this big question. I remember doing a lot of discussions around the kind of films that would eventually work after we got out of pandemic mode. And one thought was that it would be big budget films because those are the kind of films that would draw cinema goers back to cinema halls. Since so much is happening in the OTT world as well, and there too we are seeing scale. Aren't we seeing a Hira Mandi? We are looking at, content-heavy films like a Kota Factory or not films, but series even. So the kind of content that is going out, is there a stronger demarcation that is being made in what works in cinema halls versus what we sit at home and watch through OTTs?
There's a huge demarcation for cinema-loving audience. They will always love larger than life cinema experience, larger than life characters. Hiramandi is, in fact, should have been on a bigger screen. But yes, said already on this, we can always say that the films which has got bigger star value, bigger budgeted films, they will always go to bigger screens, whereas content-driven films will come to OTT. So there is a coexistence of both the mediums. But this year, especially with Bade Miyan, Chote Miyan, and then Maidan, which were huge budgeted films, they were debacles. So that was one thing because of which we thought that after pandemic we may have great runs with great star cast oriented film, but that didn't happen. So excluding Shaitan, there is not a big legitimate hit in this year. So right now we are all pushing for Kalki, and yes, for a film like Kalki with a huge star cast with Amitabh Bachchan and Kamal Haasan and Deepika and everybody, Prabhas and everybody, we need to go to cinemas. That's why people will definitely will go to experience such huge star cast, such huge grandeur, such great history and mythology mix, and then of course special effects. So I think such films are always made for bigger screens, and there is always an audience who would love to go to cinema halls and watch these films.
The economics are panning out when you look at these big budget films, and they are remarkably different. Mr. Srinivasan, you must have studied them closely into what makes them work as well. Because like Girish is pointing out as well, there are certain films that have been utter debacles as well. In recent past, a big budget doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to draw in moviegoers. there needs to be a certain punch to it. So, in terms of the economics and how much it takes to really make the cut and draw in the profits that any film of this scale would hope to, what does it really take, in your understanding?
Begin with, I completely agree with what Girish said that, for cinema, you need to take them out of reality. And when you go to the OTT, you need to give them reality. So when the moment you start talking about fantasy, you talk about dystopian era, and you talk about mythology, your budgets automatically go much much higher. Okay, so hence the recovery is also becomes extremely crucial. But having said that, the kind of production house that is involved in making a film of this nature, you have Ashwini Dutt who's backing the project, you have Nag who's directing the film, and you have people like Prabhas from South, from Telugu, you have Kamal Haasan from Tamil Nadu, you have Amitabh Bachchan from Hindi, you have Deepika Padukone also from Hindi. You have a star cast of this sort, you have huge music. The music rights of the film itself would have fetched a bomb.
Yes.
Having said that, at one point of time, satellite used to be much, much bigger than digital. Now, it's always the OTT price which actually guides the business of the film. So, films like these, they already have their OTT prices fixed much before the release of the film, which is why you get the gut feeling to push a film of this nature.
Right.
I'll just take a moment to digress. The olden days, people used to get MGs as minimum guarantees, reasons used to so that they complete the film and shoot the film. Nowadays, it is more like the MGs that come from all these platforms that actually enables a producer to have the guts to make the film. To be very frank, it's very difficult for the producer to make losses. But if the film doesn't do well, you might have an odd distributor not doing well in a certain territory.
But Mr. Ramachandran, we have spoken in the recent past about the difficulties that producers face because the size of the budget, a big chunk of that, goes for the mega star cast itself and the kind of entourage that they have. There is so much being spoken about on that front. When you talk about big budget films, I imagine all of that becomes even bigger. So then balancing becomes so much more difficult for a producer, wouldn't you say, Mr. Ramachandran?
Yeah, that's the reason why of late producers have started getting a minimum guarantee from the OTT platform so that they are kind of partly covered. In fact, if you look at some mega budget films, there are more than one producer who actually comes in so that the loss is basically minimized. Having said that, pressure on the producer is going to remain forever as long as he wants to do big films. But that's what the passion of cinema is all about. If you want to make cinema and if you want to make it for the big screen, I'm sure Girish and I both agree that, we will want films to be seen as films. Imagine Pakiza and Mughal Azam, K. Asif and Kamal Aburi making those things like Giramandi on the small screen.
Right.
I die.
But they are being made at this point in time. I did mention a couple of series, and that is actually happening. So when you talk about the demarcation, Girish, it's an important piece to understand as to what really scale is and how scale really translates, whether you put it on a screen at home or you put it in a cinema hall. That's up in the air. And we're talking about successes on both counts. And it seems to be working in sync as well, because it's not like a film that makes it to a cinema hall today is not going to be seen very soon on an OTT platform.
Yeah, of course, there is a demarcation. And when we talk about cinema, or big screen cinema, we always think about various rights and the avenues. For example, if we are talking about a film of stature of Kalki, which is being made in 600 crores, then the first revenue generation will be from the box office. The second will be from OTT. Third will be from satellite. Fourth will be from, of course, music, and then ancillary rights. So that all combines to give this movie a right proportion where you can do the ROI, return on your investment. Whereas on the OTT, when you pre-sale the film, you are safe. There is no risk at all because the entire risk is of the OTT platform. Whereas here, in this case, you have 100% risk because unless the film doesn't fare well on the box office, the OTTs or the satellites of the world will not take it they will take it only with certain slabs. If it does 100 above 100 crores, then they will have a certain slab. If it is above 200 crores, there will be another slab. So in totality, when we talk about content driven films, it has to be on OTT because there will be always surety, safeguarding of the interest of the producer, and it will be pre-sold.
Right.
Whereas the 100% risk will be always on a bigger screen because the entire box office dictates the other rights and the other avenues. So it's always a risky game for producers for big screen.
How much of this risk that the producer over here has taken in Kalki's case, whether or not it's going to pay off, that remains to be seen. But Mr. Srinivasan, when you're looking at films, you can't ignore cricket. These are the two pillars of our entertainment pack that really work. And the men in blue, they're all set to take on England in the second semi-final of the T20 World Cup tomorrow, which is why it is top of mind as well. When you talk about these entertainment pieces, Mr. Srinivasan, tell us, between cricket and the business of making films, what would be better at this stage? Mr. Srinivasan, to you.
So, cricket has actually become entertainment with the IPL coming in. They've called it cricket weds entertainment, if you remember, when they launched the IPL for the first time. Vikrant, and that is what it is all about. People want entertainment at all times. And there are people who might not go for a certain show on a certain day for a match, which doesn't really mean that the film will not do well. The past has seen that some films have not opened well or primarily done well on a Thursday because there is a film on a premiere day on Thursday or a Friday because a cricket match is being played on that day. But having said that, that doesn't really affect, as in this case, I can actually safely say, Chodo Kalki Baatein, Kalki Baat Purani, because this Kalki is set in the future.
He is set in the future, but of course, what happens on opening day, we don't have too long to wait, and that's going to be revealed very soon. And perhaps we'll carry on this discussion based on the kind of success that this film has in the box office, and whether or not it takes big budget films to another level or not, and whether we're going to see more of that is all up in the air. Mr. Srinivasan, Mr. Girish Wankhede, thank you very much for joining us on this discussion on films and the entire scope of entertainment and its business as we discuss it.
If you like this video, then like, share and subscribe to ET Now.